Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Baker.
Present.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Ingert.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Mills.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. And next on our agenda is presentations and awards. Tonight, as a result of the public safety softball tournament called Battle of the Badges that occurred on July the 15th at Rec Park, we have a presentation for public safety scholarships, and I will turn it over to Raymore's officer, Stephanie Hornbeck, to start this off. Yes, please. Is it on? Is your mic on? Green light's on?
Green light's on.
There you
we
go.
go. Technology challenged, I apologize. Again, thank you so much for your time. Just to give you a little background on what Battle of the Badges is, this started as an idea with the Belton Police and the Belton Fire as a friendly game of softball between the two of them. They then decided to include their counterparts from Raymore in the Raymore Police Department, South Metro Fire, for this tournament for softball. We had our first softball tournament the year before last, and then this most recent one, we decided that we wanted to be able to give back to our communities that support us as much as they do. And in doing that, we decided to give back to the Raymore Peculiar Education Foundation and the Belton Education Foundation and start scholarships for kids who want to enter the fields of public safety, such as law enforcement and fire and EMS. That is going to be called the Battle of the Badges Public Safety Scholarship. Apologies. And then this last tournament, we were able to raise about $1,100. So we have checks for each of the foundations for $550 to go towards scholarships for this school year for those students who are interested in these fields. And we just want to say thank you to our communities for coming out and supporting this cause. And thank you so much to the officers and members of the fire and EMS departments that were able to come out and play. And it was a really great time. And we were able to keep this longstanding tradition of rivalry between police and fire and the Belton and Ray Peck school districts going. So thank you so much. And I believe we've got checks to present.
All right. Yeah, sure. We'll do photos first. And then they're already there. That's not. Is that the good part, or do you have checks to present?
Oh, I did check. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't see it, our backs were turned.
Oh, you already got it. Well, that was quick. All right.
I guess we want to know who the winner of this last tournament was. It was.
Yeah, did you keep score?
We did keep score. There was a first place winner, and that was South Metro Fire. Again.
Well, I would like to say, I think that the winners are the kids.
There we go. There we go.
Coming from the last place team.
That's okay. I got one overall.
Love it. I know. Oh, that's funny. Love it. Thank you all for being here tonight. Okay, we have no other personal appearances, so we'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Salisbury, our new Public Works Director, to make a report for Public Works tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. In addition to the report that was submitted, I only have one other thing. The bids were open last week for the extension of Sunset Lane, and we're going to be working to move that forward as fast as possible. Hopefully, they'll be able to start on some of the infrastructure work this fall and then pave it in the early spring. And that concludes my staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Trent. Yes, Mr. Barber. Sorry. I know, right? I didn't recognize you.
Yeah. By the way, congratulations, Mr. Salisbury. I was reading your report and noticed the first thing on there was the police firing range, and I knew there was some power issues. And how close are we to kind of wrapping that whole project up? And I know Honeywell's got some things that they're going to do, but as far as the city side of it, how far are we from wrapping things up?
As soon as we can get a price from our fence contractor to install the gate operators, a week or two at most, and then it's done. So it's very, very close
Very
finally.
close. Excellent. Anyone else have any questions, Mr. Salisbury? Also, again, congratulations, Mr. Salisbury. We're looking forward to working with you. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, members of the council, I also have submitted a written report. Just a couple things to highlight. Tomorrow, we will have 5 nights left of the farmers market for the season, and that'll wrap us up through the end of September. This Friday, August 30th, is our Friday Food Fest at Recreation Park. We have 6 food trucks coming. Alex Sun's band will be there playing live music, so bring a chair. Should be a good time if it's not too hot. Hopefully, weather will work with us on that. Just 2 more things. Trail work at Memorial Park is underway, so if you receive any calls or you're out walking the trails, that particular portion of the project is currently under construction. So
Okay.
the older part there under the Arboretum is pretty much inaccessible right now, except the larger loop. So you can still make the big loop, you just can't do the little trails. And then finally, just wanted to say thank you to our sponsors, our volunteers, Alex with our communications department, my park maintenance guys, and rec staff for the Rugged Raymore, our mini mud run. We had another successful year. We changed that up, added a few new obstacles. I mean, how can you go wrong with a fog machine and a slip and slide that goes down a hill, you know? So had a lot of good response, and looking forward to next year. So that concludes staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. Anyone have any questions, Mr. Mustine? Thank you, sir. Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Ms. Mustine. I would ask Ms. Harmer to make a report for communications.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I want to start out by saying that for the 3rd year in a row, we are happy to host the Dream Factory of Kansas City's Fishing for Dreams tournament coming up on September 7th. It's not a tournament, it's a day of family fun. September 7th at Hawkridge Park, and I think just a reminder that, like, how great is it that we have a fully inclusive, accessible park so that these children with like life-threatening and chronic illnesses can have a day of fun where they don't have to worry about all of that stuff. So that they're expecting about 100 people for that event, and we provide the shelter for that event to them at no cost, 100% volunteer-run organization. So I think that we can be really proud of being able to host that for a 3rd year in a row. And September 13th, Friday, September 13th, upcoming reggae concert at the amphitheater at Hawkridge Park. And then big concert announcement. A few weeks ago, I was contacted by the U.S. Air Force, and their jazz ensemble from their Air Force Band of Mid-America will be playing Saturday night, September 21st at Hawkridge Park Amphitheater. So I think it's about a 16-person band. They're on tour, so we're one of their tour stops through the Midwest. So that's really exciting, and we're looking forward to that. And I wanted to tell you first, and it will be going out public here very soon. And finally, this fall, we are starting a civic leadership academy, to give residents a look into the inner workings of City Hall and our staff and our departments, just to get one-on-one information about the things that we really do that people might not realize that our departments do for the city. So that information will also be coming public very soon, but that starts at the end of September. It's on Thursdays for 5 weeks, and then the graduation is actually at your October 28th City Council meeting. anyway, more information on that
Are
soon.
there,
The review is at the printer, and all of this information is also in the review.
Right. And in order to have that academy, do you have a minimum number of students you'd like to have?
Well, we can have up to 20.
Okay.
Up to 20. You need to be a Raymore resident, at least 18. Or Raymore residents are accepted first, but otherwise, business owners or people that are employed here. That information will be out soon, and we hope that we can have at least 20 people in the class. Everywhere that I've researched several other cities doing these, and they've been very popular there, so I hope it's the same here.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate the extra effort in doing that too, pulling that together.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Yes, Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's great news about the Air Force Jazz Ensemble. That's really nice pickup. I'll challenge you. Can you leverage that into getting the Marine Corps drill team here for our Veterans Day celebration? Notice I didn't say which year.
I'll just keep that in mind. I'll write it down.
There you go. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Mr. Fairborn?
Thank you, Ms. Harbour. As the council may have noted, the developer Mako has placed a letter in front of you all to describe what will be their latest application for a project. The council may remember that their last application for a project is the LIHTC housing that is going in south of Lucy Webb and west of Dean Avenue. Not quite finished with that particular one. This one is being proposed for north of Price Chopper, where it was originally going to be a non-LIHTC senior center, and that particular project has gone away. More to come on this particular application process.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Last but not least, there will be no meeting next Monday unless an emergency comes up. It is the Labor Day holiday. That concludes staff reports tonight, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff or Mr. Fairborn? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. We have no committee reports. We have 2 items under the consent agenda this evening. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I move at this time that we approve the consent agenda as presented to include item A, the city council meeting minutes from the meeting of August 12th, 2024, and item B, resolution 2424, Eastbrook 4th, acceptance of public improvements.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Abdelgawad. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the 200 items under the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3909 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3909 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, granting a conditional use permit pursuant to City Code Section 435.100 for additional signage to be installed for Chick-fil-A on the property located at 1920 West Foxwood Drive, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you, ma'am. If there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Your Honor.
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I would move that we approve Bill 3909, the Chick-fil-A conditional use permit for signage.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Abdelgawad. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3909. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3908 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3908 by title only, an ordinance pursuant to Section 67.110 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, levying general and special taxes in the City of Raymore, Missouri for the year 2024.
Thank you, ma'am. If there are no further questions on this item, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of it.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mills.
I would like to propose an amendment to Bill 3908, setting the levies at the following amount, which is what they currently are for 2023. Section 1, general purposes, for it to be set at .3949. Section 2, the sinking fund, at .7170, and the park levy at .1063.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure your amendment is in order. Generally, we go for the motion to approve, and then in that phase, we fall into the amendment. on that particular item, if I'm not mistaken.
I
Mr.
was-
Zur,
I was
can you,
told that could be at either one of
could you
those.
go ahead and offer the amendment at this time?
He absolutely can, Your Honor. He
All
can
right, sir.
propose it as a motion, which is an alteration of the original proposed
Okay, all
levy.
right, fine,
You'll
thank you.
still need a second, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Baker?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mills and Mr. Baker, Mr. Mills made the motion to amend. Mr. Baker has seconded that motion to amend. We'll now enter a discussion on that particular motion. So to delineate your descriptions of the breakdown, could you say that one more time? Did you have those in your notes, Mr. Fearborn? What Mr. Mills offered?
Yes, sir. It would be, what was proposed and recommended by staff within the ordinance was that the general fund be at 39 and 62 100 cent. The motion in front of you is to reduce that, to roll that back to this year's level or last year's level, which would be 39 and 49 100 cent. That the Parks and Recreation levy, which was proposed within the ordinance at 10 and 66 100 cent, this motion would roll that back to 10 and 63 100 cent, and the debt service fund would remain the same at 71 and 70 100 cent. That would be a reduction from staff recommendation in the general fund of 13 100 cent, and a reduction in the Parks and Recreation fund of 3 100 cent.
Okay. Does the sponsor of the motion realize the effect this has on our budget as it relates to the tax levy?
I understand that. I also understand the effect it has on the residents in our community during this time. And as we're working through budget, we'll just have to make adjustments, just like they're all having to make adjustments right now.
Yeah, I know that in the budget, they had a police officer budget for that, so it's almost defunding the police from the perspective of
It
laying
is not
open the-
defunding the police, Mr. Mayor. There's plenty of additional
pretty close to it when
revenue
it's
there.
over, it's nearly 50% of the overall budget. I don't know where
No, it's not
else you
50%
expect.
of the overall budget.
It's 46%.
We
Pretty
have-
darn close.
There's enough money there in the budget to continue to take care of the police department, which is a priority. So it depends, we just have to make priorities, just like everybody else has to do. So it is not a motion to defund the police.
Okay.
We will find money in the budget for that officer. That's, determined we can do that.
Okay. Mr. Burke, discussion?
If I could ask either of the sponsors of this bill to give the economic impact of this, since you've researched this before you made this motion?
Mr. Mills, Mr. Baker, either one of you wanna
There's
respond
no
to that?
research other than that's what our current levy is, and we're operating under that current levy, fine. And so we should be able to continue to move forward. We also have our economic development, the things that are moving forward. I don't see that there's a need. It's 1 cent, and so if it's not a big deal to raise it 1 cent, it shouldn't be a big deal to not raise it 1 cent.
Well, I would beg to differ, but if there's some other folks, yes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mills, or Councilman Mills, did you speak to anybody on staff about what this might do to the upcoming budget process and what we'd have to do coming up? Have you broached this idea with anyone else?
All I did was ask if this was a possibility to be able to be done. We're at the very beginning of budget, so this is the time to do it, and we'll make those adjustments in the budget as we need to. That's what we're here for as a governing board, is to sometimes make some tough decisions, and our constituents are having to make a lot of tough decisions right now, and I don't think that we need to be increasing their property tax at this point in time.
Any further discussion? Mr. Barber?
Yeah, I did do some research on this, and this is interesting. I checked mine. My property taxes would go up $1.25. Mr. Mills, yours would go up 74 cents. And by the way, the levy in 2019 was 1.2497. If there had, and I talked to our assessor down in the county, if there hadn't been an adjustment for the personal property taxes on the way the vehicles are adjusted, our levy would have went down. But they use a different formula now, so our validation went down $4 million. Is that correct, Mr. Fairborn? So this is the first time in our council, that I've been on the council, that we had to raise it just a tick. But it, again, the levy, if it was to pass today, would be less than it was in 2019.
Well, not to mention that the levy was established by the community to begin with. And the Hancock Amendment allows for adjustments in order to stay up with the cost of living. And I know you read in the, or heard in the budget presentation that the compensation package was going to be fairly expensive in order for us to recruit and retain talent. Mr. Holman, did you have anything? Sonia, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to ask this question one more time, maybe so I can make sure that I understand the answer. Specifically, do you know what this difference, how that would impact our budget for next year? Like, how many dollars are we talking about? How are we going to adjust the proposed budget from last week in order to accommodate this change that you're suggesting?
I don't have that exact dollar amount, but I do, as we went through the budget, saw that there was things, additional funds there and additional choices and decisions that we have to make within that budget that we're currently being able to do at this point in time. And I believe the budget can sustain, you know, the roughly $98,000 to add another police officer without having to raise this levy. And again, as Councilman Barber mentioned, you know, it's like 70 cents is not a big deal, $1.15 is not a big deal. So if it's not a big deal, then there's no need to raise the levy. So that's, again, that's my opinion. And everybody has the right to their opinion, but I think our taxpayers do not need to have an additional burden placed upon them. And we as a council and our great staff, we can figure out ways to make this budget work.
Well, do you have something? Okay, I was just going to say, so I anticipated, because I knew you'd inquired, so I asked Mr. Feuerborn to prepare some information as it relates to the levy, because frankly, your motion makes people in the audience and in the community feel like you're giving them some kind of break when we have to have sufficient funding to provide the services that we provided. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Feuerborn if you could talk about the history a little bit of the tax levy and what a reduction has the potential of creating for us.
Yes, sir. So just from a definitional standpoint, just so we know what we're talking about, the Raymore voter approved levy is actually $1. And you see that on your summary form that you all have as supplemental information to this. What we talk about each year being approved is actually the ceiling. So the voters in Raymore approved in the general fund, and we're talking about the operating funds here, not the debt service. In the operating funds, the maximum amount that the voters approved for that levy to be set at is $1. The whole point of that, though, is each year you're voting on the ceiling that you're going to hit. And I guess when we were all in elementary school and junior high, we had word problems and we all hated them compared to normal arithmetic. You had to do word problems. And within a word problem, what you have is the end is a result. The past the equal sign is a result. Everything in front of the equal sign, x times y, is a factor. In the case of the levy ceiling that is calculated each year, the ceiling is a result. Everything that contributes to that, it's the last item on the sheet that you see. So people tend to look at the levy and go, well, they're just assessing a tax to us and it's going to raise this much. No, the key is that result is factored on what legally, and what Hancock did in 1980 is it said, this is how much revenue the city can garner. And so everything starts with how much revenue can the city garner. And what factors into that is the city, what Hancock says is, the city can garner no more revenue this year than it did last year. We are limited to that. And so in addition to that, it takes into account, and you always hear me refer to it because it's actually kind of the statutory definition of it, there are artificial caps put on how much that revenue can grow from one year to another. And there are three things that go into, when you take the box of what the revenue was last year, there are three things that revenue can be increased for that are considered reasonable. Number one, the actual growth in assessed valuation of the city. Number two is the inflation rate. And we often go to the inflation rate because the inflation rate, by virtue of our rapid growth, the inflation rate is actually kind of the one that we fall back on a lot. The third one is the artificial cap. At no point can we increase by more than 5%. So a couple of years ago, we had double-digit inflation and we had double-digit growth. We were limited in that to the 5%. We couldn't garner those. The reason the other two are looked at is because it's kind of a natural extension. Last year, we were able to garner $196 million. It makes sense that the same inflation, let's say, that applies to the households, an individual, applies to the city. So the state says you can capture that inflation rate, or if the inflation rate is really high, but you've had this growth, the state recognizes you have additional costs associated with growth. So you can go out there and you can capture that additional, as long as it's not over 5%. That's the artificial cap. What the artificial cap has led to over the course of time, and it is one of, you'll rarely hear me say this, it's one of the beauties of the Hancock Amendment, is it naturally creates a protection for the taxpayers. That's why it was put in place. And it refers back to, city, you can't ask for outrageous amounts of revenue that are not associated with real numbers. And the starting point is always, you can't capture more revenue this year than last year, except for these reasonable parameters that we're going to put in place. So because most years with our growth and inflation being where it's at, we have been obviously anywhere between 0 and 5%. What that has led to is, and I always go back to the first year that we won the budget award, which is exactly 20 years ago now. So 20 years ago, the general fund levy was 0.4702. What is being proposed tonight is 0.3967, that's staff recommended before the motion. So a reduction of 7 $1.35 has actually occurred naturally, just with our growth and the fact that you've heard me refer to the water balance. As that growth has occurred or that inflation has occurred, the levy has to go down necessarily. So that has been in the last 20 years, our levy has actually gone, our general fund levy has actually gone down 39.67%. Park fund, same thing, 20 years ago, 0.1266, proposed now 0.1068, a 15.63% reduction in the park fund levy in the last 20 years, not an increase. So real numbers associated with that for us. The revenue last year that we were allowed to garner through this, 1,960,808, and you see that on the summary page. The three factors: inflation at 3.4%. You'll remember me talking about that last week from the state auditor, or we can never quite figure out where that comes from, but it's 3.4%. The cap of 5%, and then the assessed valuation growth. And that makes this something of an unusual and phenomenal year for us. Talked about the personal property going down last week, almost $4 million. What that led to is we are in a situation where, and the summary page that you all have there, we're actually in a situation where our total assessed valuation, the growth factor, has gone backwards. This year's assessed valuation is actually lower than last year's total because of the personal property issue by 0.44%. Now the cap on that is they don't allow you to register the fact that you're in a negative growth situation. So it goes to 0. So the three factors this year are the lower of 3.4 inflation, 5% cap, or 0 growth, which is extraordinary that the city of Raymore has 0 growth. That's the lower number. So we have to use the 0 this year, which means the revenue we are allowed to capture this year, the starting point for all of this, remains at 1,960,808, which is kind of unheard of. Any questions on that?
So, but what it does mean is that this is a revenue neutral request for a change in the levy in order for us to maintain the level of income for the services we provide.
That is correct, sir. And one of the other items that I do want to point out, and you could all see it on your form, there's two ways to look at this. Holding the levy at the same rate that it was last year. But the fact of the matter is the state does not allow for that wording to be used. In the state's eyes, we are legally allowed to assess this levy. Anything lower than that can only be reported on the sheet as a rollback. So if the motion passes, this will be considered a rollback to the levy because we are legally allowed to charge this levy under the restrictive circumstances that are there. The one problem in this year is, and they actually spell it out on the summary page of the levy. Under item H, less voluntary reduction by a political subdivision, I gave you those two, the 0.0013 in the general fund, so we'll just use that one. Underneath that, in caps, warning, a voluntary reduction taken in an even numbered year will lower the tax rate ceiling for the following year. So regardless, we're actually not talking about 1 year. We're talking about having to make adjustments for 2 years because our box is going to be lower that we're allowed to capture from. So you want to keep that in mind, that this is just data. The council's on that side of the dais. It's up to you what you want to do politically. I am simply stating the black and white of the numbers and what's on the form, with the one caveat: please do remember, you're not talking about a 1 year process here, you're talking about a 2 year, because it would be a 2 year rollback. And actually that kind of carries forward a little bit. We are allowed to adjust in the assessment year. But the fact of the matter is the rollback kind of becomes a permanent deal because it does impact revenues in every single year. You still start with the formula of you can't capture more revenues except for the following factors. That concludes my report, sir.
All right, sir. So what I'm hearing is that if we roll it back, it creates a new artificial ceiling that for any increases in the future would have to go back to a vote of the people.
That's correct, sir. At this point in time, and thank you for bringing that up. So the $1 is in there, and there's plenty of room for what's been voted on by the voters of Raymore as our maximum. At any point in time, we can go back to the voters, but what you're going back to the voters on is a change in the ceiling, not in the maximum allowable, because there's a lot of room there to get to the dollar for sure.
Right. Any further discussion? Mr. Woolman?
Sir, the proposed amendment is asinine on its face, and it is dangerous in illogical or no logical thinking that brought it before us. It makes no sense. I implore this council to vote against that amendment. I don't know, Mr. Mills, if you are a defund the police activist, but that could be the result of this. It could also be a case where we have to close a park down in the spring because we had a very rough winter and we had to pay for a very expensive sewer break, or we had a sinkhole that developed in 58 Highway. This is poor legislation at its best and on its face. That's all I have, sir.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Baker?
I guess my take on this is hearing all the comments that were obviously prepared in advance on both sides here before hearing about this tonight. But I do think we are at a climate in our city more than anything else that the only people paying for things in Raymore are Raymore citizens. We have very little outside members of the metro coming to Raymore to pay for things. I think that with a robust environment of bringing businesses in here, developing the pork chop, things like that, that's how we get more tax revenue into the city. We don't rely upon the old methods of raising taxes, raising fees, and all that. I take all the points made from the dais tonight and from staff to heart when I talk about this, because we know that to run a business is much like running a home, and sometimes you do have to take hard decisions and hard stances. Walking the community in which I live in Ward 1, the number one thing I hear every single time is taxes in Raymore. And it's a fact of life. Some people understand it. Some people probably need to go to the Citizens Academy, and that would be an eye-opening thing that people could understand how all this legislation is made, even at a local level, as much opposed to what happens in Jeff City and Washington, D.C. People have to make choices that affect everything. So I do look at our inflation right now. It's a wage inflation. It's a fuel inflation. Probably not going anywhere anytime soon. Maybe it might next year. But I do know that from the citizens I represent, the people that I talk to on a daily or weekly basis, this small gesture, it may cause us to find a place to make up, if it's $1 a house on average, 20,000 residences, we might have to look at that. Businesses are at a higher tax rate than the 19% assessed value for residences, but our job is to make decisions, and sometimes they're tough. So, I take Mr. Holman's comments that, somewhat aggressive, but this is what we get elected for, is to make decisions, to talk about it, to come as a group. I don't take anything offensively what I hear up here. Someone wants to attack me, so be it. But we all have an opinion, and my opinions are based on my constituents and what they tell me every single day and every week. Sometimes I have to explain this is what we have to do. But in this case here, that's why I support Councilman Mills, at least to discuss this. I think it's worthy of a discussion of anything else. And then it guides us down the road. Whatever the vote is what we will vote tonight on, this being a second reading, that if this doesn't pass and the original amendment passes, then we're in the same place where we were before we started discussion 2 weeks ago. So I just think we need to have an honest discussion about it, and then it guides us down the road to where we need to go. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Barber.
I appreciate everybody's comments, and one of the things that I've learned is I get the same comments, my taxes are high. And then I tell them, let's get on the Cass County website and let's look up your real estate taxes. Let's see what you're actually paying. There's 9 taxing districts for us in Raymore. The city is, I'll just give you mine. Ray-Pec School District's number 1, almost $4,000 for me. I don't have a child in Ray-Pec School District, but I do understand that a strong school district means a strong community. And I learned that from the Foxwood Springs people. Raymore's number 2 for me, $950. I just checked, I pay $1,800 a year to have my yard mowed. I sure in the hell get more service for $950 from the city of Raymore than I do from my lawn man. And the other taxing districts are just important, South Metro, ambulance, all that. So when you have somebody look at that and go, look where we are on the list. We're not the ones, there's other taxing entities, there's 9 of them. And I'm amazed at my friends that didn't know that. They thought their whole tax bill was going to the city. And it's up to us as council people to educate these people. Tell them what they're getting. Do you want to give up, and I hear about potholes, I hear about curbs, I hear about sidewalks. That has to be paid for some way. So our first job is to really educate ourselves and then educate the people that come to us for answers and questions.
Thank you, sir. Well, if there's no one else, we'll, Sonia, go ahead.
I think my finger's invisible tonight. Just teasing. I just wanted to share that if I'm making a decision as important as this one, I want to base that decision on data. We heard from Mr. Mills, he didn't really look at any data when he came up with these numbers that he proposed tonight. We heard from Mr. Fearborn a whole lot of data and information about the topic we're discussing. And so down here, I heard my opinion, I hear from my neighbors, but again, no data that really supports this proposal. So just a little bit of my insight on why I'll be voting against this amendment.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? There's no further questions. I'll go ahead and, it seems interesting enough to call for the roll call, please.
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad?
Voting against the amendment, no.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
No.
Councilmember Burke?
Nay.
Councilmember Circo?
No.
Councilmember Ingert?
No.
Councilmember Holman?
No.
Councilmember Mills?
Yes.
The amendment fails with a vote of 6 noes and 2 yeses. We'll now move on to the item at hand. I'd entertain a motion to approve the second reading of Bill 3908.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we approve Bill 3908, setting the 2024 tax levy in its original version as presented to the council tonight.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Abdel-Gawad. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3908. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
No.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Ingert?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Mills?
No.
Motion carries 6 yes, 2 no. We'll now move on to the next item. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3910 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3910 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Legacy Underground Construction, Inc. for the 2024 fire hydrant and valve replacement project, city project number 24-457-201, in the amount of $217,600, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there, there's no further questions. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I move that we approve Bill 3910, the award of contract for the fire hydrant and valve replacement project.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Abdel-Gawad. The motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3910. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. I will now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3911 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3911 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city to enter into a reimbursement agreement with KCI Raymore South LLC related to public infrastructure improvements in the city.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Ms. Lee to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The infrastructure reimbursement that's a mouthful. The infrastructure reimbursement agreement you have before you is between the city and KCI Raymore South LLC, a subsidiary of Van Trust Real Estate. This agreement relates to the Governor's Transportation Cost Share Program that the city applied for and received in 2023. This agreement would allow the city to submit KCI Raymore South LLC's project reimbursement costs to the Missouri Highway Transportation Commission after the extension of Dean Avenue and the improvements of 195th Street are made. This agreement also grants KCI Raymore South LLC sales tax exemption for infrastructure improvements. Along with city staff, Sarah Granath and Sid Douglas with Gilmore and Bell, the city's Economic Development Legal Counsel, are here tonight to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jordan. Any questions of Ms. Lee? Any questions of Mr. Douglas? No? Mr. Fearborn, do you have anything to add to this?
That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. If there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Your Honor,
Mr. Holman.
I move that we approve Bill 3911, infrastructure reimbursement agreement.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Abdel-Gawad. Motion been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3911. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. That concludes the regular business of the council this evening. We'll now move on to public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Good evening, Pam Jenkins Hatcher, 1403 North Madison, Raymore, Missouri. I actually hadn't attended tonight to make any public comments, but due to the passionate conversation that I witnessed tonight during the consent agenda, I decided to step up and speak. While I appreciated everyone's comments and energy tonight, I certainly, as a taxpayer and resident of the community, appreciated someone's intent in attempting to keep our taxes the same, but as a taxpayer and a small business owner, I do not mind paying the increased taxes. As a small business owner, and I fully understand the tax levy, I would not want to see the city being constrained as far as the next couple of years. I understand the assessment issue. I also believe that the landfill impacted the growth of the city for the past 2 years. As a real estate broker, I witnessed it firsthand. I was on the front row of that and saw it impact this. If you had not passed that, I think that would have locked our hands considerably from a budget standpoint for the next 2 years. I also would like to address taxpayers and hearing that their taxes are high. I agree with Councilmember Barber. People do not understand their tax bills. I spoke to someone who was running for county assessor, and she mentioned that her monthly mortgage went up, and I asked her how much her insurance went up. Well, it actually had gone up more than what her tax bill went up, but because her mortgage payment went up, she blamed it all on the tax bill. So we do need to all do a better job of going through those line items and explaining exactly how much goes to the city of Raymore versus how much goes to our school district. And I think all of us who support public education need to continue to support and go through those line items. I think as we all need to work on our communication and working together as a team and support one another and understand what are those data facts and what are those specific items, because we as a community want that economic development brought in here, because the more economic development we bring in, the lower that tax burden is to those residents. So when I talk about that, the small business owner, if we could figure out some way for the city to help them, yeah, we all want Chick-fil-A's, yeah, we all want the large, big, retailer, but there are a lot of small business owners that live right here in our own community, and we need to figure out how to get them out from under the roofs of some of these slumlords that are not helping them. There are properties and there are buildings here in our community that they would like to own and be building owners themselves, but they can't afford between the interest rate and the real estate taxes to become their own building owner for that small business. So I would encourage you as a city council to look at that and figure out how we could create some tax incentives for our own locally owned small businesses to be their own building and land owners themselves and continue that economic growth, because it's right here in our own backyard, and they will be contributing more taxes on their own without just being lease tenants to large people who are already making plenty of money already. Thank you very
ma'am.
much.
Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Good evening, Council. Reginald Townsend, 1914 Socorro Drive, Raymore, Missouri. I too hadn't planned on stepping up tonight to make any comments, but Ms. Hatcher inspired me, and her words inspired me that I could come up here and say what she said. Everything that she said resonated with me, resonated with the conversation that was here tonight, and all the points and things that she brought out tonight are the words that I would like to echo and reinforce tonight, because as we move this city forward, the things that staff has done to present the budget and looking at and hearing the budget presentation and the workshops and the needs of this community and the future of this community is definitely key and critical. So I appreciate the conversations and the vote tonight and the work that staff and the council is doing to make sure this city is here today and is set up for success tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else care to address the council at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on from the public comment section, and we'll move on to the mayor-council communications. Mr. Burke, I'll let you start tonight, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just trying to figure out what I was going to say. Number one, pardon me. Number one, I got a lot of great feedback about the mud run, people that volunteered and people that also participated. They said it was bigger and better than ever, and so I heard that from multiple people. The other thing I wanted to say, I guess, there's a program that all of us are allowed to participate in the Leadership Institute that they present. And the first year that I was on council, I didn't know a lot about this kind of stuff. I knew a lot about biology, I knew a lot about running a school district and things like that, but I had to go and educate myself because I feel like it's my duty to know what the heck I'm voting on. And I have always promised every week to read every page of the packet, no matter how many hundreds of pages. It was short this week, but sometimes it's 400 or 500 pages. And I've been doing that for 9 years, and every week there's something to learn in the pages of the packet. And I feel like a lot of times I want to take the opportunity to ask questions before we get here. But if you haven't participated in the Leadership Institute, It's a good use of some of your summertime down in, they used to do in Columbia. I don't know if they still do, but it's a very good program. I suggest that anybody who hasn't taken that opportunity, you should check it out. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mills?
Again, compliment the mini mud run. I was disappointed due to my challenges this year. I didn't get to participate, but that's always one of the highlights of the summer is that mini mud run. So, again, the one thing is, as Councilmember Baker had mentioned, I think our citizens deserve good, honest, open communication. And they deserve to see that questions are asked. And no matter how we vote, sometimes we may be supportive of something, but we'll still sometimes ask those questions to discussion. I think it helps the citizens understand how decisions are made. I would hope in the future that we could have these discussions without personal attacks or name calling or things like that, that we can do it in an adult manner. And, you know, I appreciate that, but I think our citizens deserve that. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of having those conversations because in one sense, just as you mentioned, it helps educate everybody on why decisions are made. So if you don't like the idea of asking questions and having some discussion, you might want to get used to it. But I think our citizens deserve that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, Ms. Salisbury, I want to congratulate you once again on the promotion. Look forward to all the success hopefully you have in the Public Works Department. Secondly, I did attend the Battle of the Badge tournament. I just want to commend all the participants and family members. I saw Councilwoman Abguad up there. It was a very hot day, to say the least. I was up there about an hour, and it was hot. So for all the participants going out there, whether we win or lose in that tournament, I agree with Chief Wilson. It was for the right reasons and for the kids and all that. But hats off to everyone who participated and was there watching and all that. It was a cool tournament to see. That's the first one I wanted to go see what it was about. Lastly, and kind of my annual talk about one of our local residents, Luke Grimm, from Ward 1. Parents live in Ward 1. He is a starting wide receiver for the University of Kansas Jayhawks, who opened the season this Thursday night at the Sporting Kansas City field because the stadium's being rebuilt. They're playing Lindenwood, which I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with Lindenwood. There might be one person in here that knows that. But good luck to Luke for hopefully a successful season. They're 22nd ranked team in the nation. Hopefully Luke gets a lot of prime time TV. I know several times last year they would show a picture of him and have Raymore, Missouri below his name on ESPN and big things. So that's cool. Whenever I see that, I go, hey, he's from our city and from my ward. So good luck, Luke, to the season, and good luck to the Jayhawks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, yes, Mr. Salisbury, congratulations. You do a fine job. You've worked under the wings of Mike. I know he's taught you a lot, and we're proud to have you there. I think the Air Force band coming is great. As a veteran, I think it's awesome to have one of our groups, the Air Force or whoever it may be, come here and do that. It'll sound good. You know they're very good at what they do. I think the Citizen Academy will be a good outlet. I think it'll help people. I think that's something we can try to get to 20 people in. The third year at the Dream Factory, another great milestone. That's very good. It works very well for the kids and for the city, and I like that. But I'll say I didn't comment much on what was going on tonight. Actually, as a council member, I really never even saw this coming. But I went through it, and I've been here before, and I'm here now. But I can tell you, we always work on things, and we work on different things. Sometimes we don't always agree. We can't be 8-0 every time. But we agree to disagree, and we do talk usually in the work sections and what we do. But we're never going to get an 8-0 vote consistently. That's never going to happen, because if it did, people will start to wonder just who's sitting up here, if they don't have a mind and a direction of their own. And they do, and that's okay with me. We still can get along. We need to get along. We need to sometimes maybe tone it down a little bit when we're up here. because we can move on through this, and it's going to come with a vote like it did. But we need to take ourselves and temper down, calm down. I didn't have to say much, because it was all being said around me. My vote said it all. But again, these things happen. We knew at the levy, we knew things, and we had a couple of council members who were on one side and the other ones on the other. But again, that's not a bad thing to have discussions. It's good that people can see that we're human and we have different values. But it came across very well. The city had their points. Mr. Mills, Mr. Baker had their points. But again, I was kind of stuck here going, as a council member, like, what are we doing? I didn't see this coming. Hopefully in the future I could. But I have no problem with it. We move on to tomorrow. The city's growing. People are doing well. We'll discuss our other issues as we take them on week by week, and we'll grow as a city. And I think everything's fine, but I just please temper down on the comments and the way we go at each other. Let's just discuss things. We can do that very well as adults, and then we can move on through this. We'll do a vote, and we'll move from there. But it was a great evening, but there's a lot of accomplishments here with the staff and some people here, things that are coming our way. So it's just a great night for all that. So again, thank you all very much. Good evening.
Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate people having a different opinion. You know, if you raise a family and you have kids, especially teenagers, you know that you're all not going to agree on everything all the time. And you go on and get things done anyway. But I will say this, Raymore is a first-class city. We've had many community conversations, we've had many surveys, and all of our folks talk about our services, what we do, and what we provide. I've never once had anybody say we need to cut this, we need to cut that. They expect this to be a first-class city. You know, my dad said there's two types of people. There's talkers and there's doers. There was some talking up here tonight. I'm going to challenge some folks to be doers. Ward 1 council members, be an example to the rest of us and see what you can cut out of the budget in Ward 1. Be a doer, don't be a talker. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, sir. I will echo the congratulations to Mr. Salisbury on his promotion. And then just a couple comments about the conversation tonight. I know, having been up here for longer than anyone else, it sure would feel good. It would look good to be able to tell people that you were the one up here that cut their taxes. But in all my years up here, I know it's not about me. It's not about what's best for me or what looks good for me. It's about being responsible for the big picture of the city. It's about taking care of the city long term. It's about listening to staff when they talk and share that data with us. And I would challenge our two newer council members, if you have something you want to propose, do your research. Bring the data that supports your proposal or your ideas. As my other council members have said, we're open to discussion, listening, but that data, that research is an important part of a proposal in front of the council. And then I'll just wrap up with a great big thank you to Stephanie Hornbeck and Chris Beal for their work on the Battle of the Badges. And that tonight just kind of brought my two worlds together, my world of taking care of the kiddos in the Belton School District and police and city all in one place. So it's wonderful that when all of our entities work together to do what's best for our kids especially and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ingert.
Congratulations, Trent. You know what you got yourself into, right? We'll find out. Just a real quick comment on the Battle of the Badge. I think that's a wonderful idea. I like the camaraderie that develops between the police and the fire. They spend so much time together anyway. There's always some natural animosity, but to change that and to do something like this, and then to have the kids be the real winners out of this, having put a daughter through college, I know what scholarships are all about, and every little penny helps as you get through this. And so what a great opportunity for our Raymore kids to get that again. And Chief, I want to tell you guys thanks for letting the fire department win this time.
We just may do that again next year. You never know.
Mr. Holman?
Thank you, Your Honor. I cannot top what Councilmember Barber and Councilmember Abdelgawad said. I concur with their comments. That's all I have this evening, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. You know, with regard to the emotion in this, Mr. Mills, it almost was framed as if what Ms. Abdelgawad kind of hinted to is the fact that it's always great to be able to tell your constituents you cut their taxes. I was listening to the conservative talking heads talking the other day, and they were talking about taxes, and one of them said, you know, my local taxes, I don't have a problem with. I can tell you what they're spent on, what kind of services I get locally. What I don't know is what the federal government is really doing with my tax dollars, and those can make a significant impact. Take, for instance, I think one of the work sessions, you mentioned New Albany, Ohio, as a replica city that we might be able to glean something from. So I happened to take a look. They had, I don't know if you did this, but they have a 3% income tax that they charge their residents in order to raise the money to do the kinds of things locally that they do that you want to aspire to have here as well. And I'm not sure hundredths of a cent within a property levy, a property tax levy, has going to make that kind of impact. We work very frugally here to get things accomplished with what we're able to get, and I think the staff does a wonderful job of doing that and telling us the kinds of resources that they need. And so emotions can run high when this just looks like it's a play for some kind of attention, so to speak, political in nature. But so I mean, I understand that's you guys. Tom, you talked about dialing it down. There's emotions related to, especially some of the senior members here who've been here for a while. We've had a pretty good run, you know, and so when someone doesn't seem like you truly understand the tax levy, Mr. Mills. That's why I asked Mr. Fearborn to talk about it a little bit more tonight and how complex it actually is. But really, I met this last Monday in a meeting with the Mid-America Regional Council. They started up a mayor's forum for solid waste. And one of the things that I pointed out to those folks in the room is that we can look to outside entities for assistance, but it all starts local. And we've all said it at some point or another, everything starts local. What we need to do is begin to be better police, so to speak, over our waste and our waste product and waste byproduct. And that's the things we're going to be working on at a local level. Hopefully, we'll bring in some manufacturing operations that have new ideas and new technologies to handle different parts of our solid waste that now go to the landfill. And I'm all for that. I want to get those in here into the Kansas City metropolitan region. And we can talk about remanufacturing, refurbishing, reclamation. We can do a lot of things that we're not doing with our trash now. Some folks in our community don't recycle. They just say, it's not worth the effort. I'll just throw it all in the same bin and it'll go to the trash pile. Well, we need to be better stewards of that. And I'm hoping that people within our community will take that up and see what they can do to be more mindful of our environment and how trash, we've seen for the last 2 years in our efforts fighting a landfill, that trash is an issue. The landfills will get full, but we've got time to prepare, and I think everybody needs to do their part. So I got to roll that into that because I'm emotional about that, and one of the reasons why I asked to be on the steering committee of that with the Mid-America Regional Council. And so I'm hoping that there's a message that I think Melissa put in our review that speaks to recycling, and hopefully folks will take up the charge and be more responsible with that. With that, that's all I have this evening. Do we have a reason to go into executive session, sir?
We do not, sir.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Holman.
Sir, I move that we adjourn this August 26, 2024 meeting of the Raymore City Council.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Abdel-Gawad. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn from the August 26th meeting.